Okay, so welcome to the January Town Hall meeting. As you all know, we alternate with a campus update, and then the following quarter we have a substance discussion about an issue that is relevant to us on campus. And so today we are going to hear about the student success work and where we are in that. And before we begin, we always start with our land acknowledgement. We recognize that all of us at UW Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, we are situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup tribe. As people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and all of our indigenous connections today. We also have the responsibility to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. And without action, those are just words. And so I try to find examples of things that we are doing that really make that land acknowledgement real. And so I found something today that I was very excited about because I knew that we were looking at trying to have a micro forest here at UW as part of our sustainability efforts. But what I learned today was that they are partnering with our Office of Indigenous Engagement and the Cedar Circle student group to label all of the indigenous plant species in both Lushootseed and English, and that they are creating a camas prairie, which is an indigenous plant species of particular interest to indigenous folks here in the Northwest. So I think that is just another example of the kinds of things that we try to do here to especially acknowledge that this land was occupied long before we were. I'll add another thing that I was very excited about. We're in the middle of we're almost at the end, not the middle, so maybe we're like 2/3 through the campus master planning process, and we had an opportunity to go and visit with the Puyallup Tribal Council right before the holidays. And they were super excited that we were there, but they were also very interested in what we were going to do and had excellent advice for us in terms of partnering on how we move forward with that campus master planning, and then reminding us that this land that there may be sacred sites along here that we should do the consultation with their offices to make sure that we are going about this work in the right way. And so their willingness to partner with us and the excitement about that was really encouraging. So as we go forward, we will continue to be in partnership with the Puyallup tribe as we develop this campus going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the dynamic duo, Bonnie and Amanda, to bring us up to speed on where we are. Wait, are you guys going to be now like the fantastic trio? Yes. I have to come up with a different name then. Anyway, thank you, the three of you, Shannon, Amanda, and Bonnie, for your leadership on this, and we'll hear where we are and have some discussion.
So I'm taking any suggestions for adjectives that are kind that start with the letter T. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Figueroa, she, her. I work in student affairs as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Social Mobility.
Bonnie Becker, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Success and Academic Affairs, she, her.
Shannon Carr, Associate Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Services.
So for our town hall update, we are going to get into some interactive discussions. But y'all I've already heard Chancellor Lang refer to some campus master planning around our space. We know that there's been academic planning that's been happening. Hopefully you've heard Bonnie and I in some configuration or one member of our group talk about student success strategy. We've had sessions across the campus about strategic enrollment planning, and one of the things that we're very conscious of is that these are all strategic initiatives that all connect to the future of the campus, and that we know that we need to continue to do work to make sure that these efforts are connected and woven together to help strengthen the future for the campus.
So while the new year typically brings about a certain amount of optimism about the future, some of us recognize that there's still a little bit of uncertainty facing us in the immediate and the distant future. Our goal in this shared work is to tackle this uncertainty by doubling down on our organizational mission and focusing on our shared commitment to equity and access as a means of harnessing those things that are in our control and stabilizing and growing our enrollment. This control starts with the complementary work of strategic enrollment planning, which has been underway for the last year and is developing strategies and initiatives to increase new student enrollment across key student populations, including high school, transfer, adult and returning, and graduate. Student success then builds on these strategies, looking to prioritize the current student experience, and this collective work is interdependent and necessary for achieving our enrollment goals in a really competitive environment.
So student success is sort of the core of what we do here. So we've been working on student success since the day the doors opened. And we really think of this work as building on efforts that have been ongoing for decades. The campus cares deeply about student success, and we all work on it in our own ways, but a big goal of what we're trying to do here is to come together and work on things collaboratively. So in 22-23, we brought together a group that did a landscape analysis looking for gaps and opportunities to improve student success. And as a result, we launched last year 5 working groups around a student success strategy. Graduate student support, removing curricular barriers, first-year experience, high-impact practices, and implementing the Slate student success system. And you'll hear more about that in a moment. 58 faculty, staff, and 1 student were part of those 5 working groups, and they submitted their quarterly updates, and we have a cumulative report with a QR code up here on the slide. If you were a member of any of the working groups last year, can you please stand and be recognized for your work? And then, if you were a co-chair of one of those working groups, can you remain standing, please? Sorry, I should have said that before you sat down. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership and for helping us to build a more collaborative and student-centered campus culture. Now, underlying all of this work is a framework that's focused on action that's going to move the needle on our overall goals to improve retention and reduce identity-based disparities. Using continuous improvement tools that we brought in last year through a group called Silva Solution, we are taking an action-oriented approach to try and test new things. And so these frames are all built on data. They're built on what we know about our students and what we think will have the most impact. So specifically, supporting the success of first-year, first-time in college students using a first-generation lens, which we know are the students that we retain least. We call that first 3 or first cubed. Creating programming to nurture the development of students' sense of purpose and sense of belonging. I hope you've heard us talk about this multiple times over the past couple of years. And then challenging ourselves to remove barriers and create opportunities for marginalized students.
So there's a lot of work that happened last year, and just some examples included some trying to build on some work that faculty have been leading for a long time around high impact practices. And so what we were really interested in is knowing that there's such an important retention tool, and knowing that our lower division students are the most likely to not persist to degree completion on campus, how do we look at creating lots and lots of opportunities for students to absolutely not have the option to miss multiple high-impact practices while they are part of the lower division and their pre-major. So a course analysis identified that in the lower division, there were only 2 research-designated and 1 service-designated course in the lower division. I recognize that there are some challenges with that analysis, and so that group has been working on that. But we're really going to be ramping up soon participation and thinking about what we can do to infuse more high-impact practices into the lower division. And if you are interested in learning more about that, you are welcome to go to our breakout table for high-impact practices when we do breakouts in just a few minutes. We also have a group that is focused on removing curricular barriers, and they were able to identify bottleneck courses. And while lots of folks are familiar in the world of education success with the term DFW, they were actually able to develop a different metric that is more aligned with identifying those things that are going to more immediately impact retention by what they called NSPG, or non-satisfactory progress grade. So those courses where students are either getting grades in courses that are prerequisites for other courses. And so those have been identified. They've developed recommendations as well and developed a white paper, and there's been some tri-campus discussion about how do we address the challenges around course equivalencies. And so some really good work. Again, that full report for what has happened last year is available at that QR code link, or if you look in the Chancellor's webpage. We're going to hear more about some outcomes from last year, but looking back, this is really an initiative about building our muscles around collaborative work. And so we feel like we are in a stronger place for collaborative culture, reduce silos. There are certainly folks involved in those working groups who have gotten a chance to work together and understand a problem from these multiple perspectives, because everyone here is in charge of very important parts of the student experience. We also have a framework. We found that having a framework and reporting deadlines and challenging ourselves in that way helped to move work forward more quickly than perhaps it would have under different conditions. And we also recognized and felt that need that different work requires different structures and endpoints, so we're getting more refined in how we're approaching these things. And finally, we know that measurement can help us focus on what matters, and that we also have recognized this year that we need to create more of a balance between leading and lagging indicators.
Speaking of leading indicators, our overall key performance indicators, or KPIs, are drawn directly from the campus strategic plan and include target retention and graduation rates, and we're also working to develop KPIs that focus on post-graduation success of our students. This figure highlights 3 key data points that we are always going to show you when we talk about student success. And so the white bar, we've got 1-year retention, 4-year graduation rates of transfer students, and 6-year graduation rates of first-time in college students. White is starting conditions. The gold, actually the purple are our targets, which come directly from the strategic plan. And then the most recent data, which is from fall 2024, are the gold bars. And I'm excited to share that retention and graduation rates have been steadily improving, with our 6-year graduation rate already exceeding the target. Eliminating equity gaps in these indicators remains a central goal of the strategic plan, as well as our work. And while we've seen progress in some areas, retention outcomes for URM students compared to non-URM students show widening gaps that require focused attention. These complex patterns highlight the importance of deeper analysis and action. So for example, last quarter, we hosted a campus data party to collaboratively explore complex equity outcome data. These sessions helped us to examine how we interpret and respond to equity data, emphasizing the shared responsibility we have in creating meaningful change. And I'll be talking a little bit more about data parties in a moment, but now we're going to shift. We've been talking about sort of looking at what we did last year, and now we're going to shift to looking forward to this year.
So we know that looking forward, and when I say looking forward, I recognize we are already 6 months into this academic year, but we knew that starting last summer that we needed to develop more infrastructure and practices for data-informed actions. And so that's where the data parties came in, and more work to come on that. We also knew that the student success strategy needs to continue to evolve and respond based on what is progressing and where our barriers are. And we also know that that needs to have a sustainability practice around around it, that we can't, as we all know, we can't keep asking folks to do working groups forever and ever, and that we also need to continue sense-making and connecting disparate planning initiatives. And so we have a visualized conception of how this work evolves, going from landscape and needs analysis to sense-making to proposal for daily works to pilots. There are likely resources that we need to consider in order to then make work part of someone's job description or part of a regular practice. And so the working groups this year, some are continuing from last year, including removing curricular barriers, high impact practices, and the SLATE student success implementation. And then we have 2 groups that have also evolved out of work last year. One you will hear about more in just a few minutes, the Student Experience Project, which is part of a national effort to support faculty professional development. And then Scaffolding First Year Exploration, which we'll have a breakout group in the back as well to learn more about that. But there is something very exciting and very actionable that's going to impact everybody's daily work that is coming up. And so we're very excited to hear a little bit more now from a group that is working on the implementation for SLATE for Student Success.
Can you have this year's co-chair stand?
Yes. And if you are a co-chair for this our working group this year, any working group, would you please stand? You didn't know you were getting your quad workouts. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. If we haven't met, I'm Andrea Coker-Anderson. I'm from the Office of the Registrar and Financial Aid and Scholarships. And I'm joined here today by
Beth Ann Hoover from the School of IAS.
Beth Ann and I have had the privilege, the fun, the joy of collaborating this past year on the SLATE for Student Success implementation. So what is that? It is a tool. Virtually a program, a system that we're going to be using that coordinates a lot of things that we're doing individually in separate systems on our campus. It is highly collaborative, as you'll see, because we are representing 2 different areas of the university. It is going to be initially phased in, and you'll see that it is primarily focused right now on academic advising tasks, appointment scheduling, student-facing offices. So the registrar's office for sure is included with that. Why do we need a new system? There are lots of systems out there already, but what this one does for us is continue the already integrated work that has been established by the undergraduate admissions area, as well as students that are experiencing admission through the graduate school. So now we're going to take that initial experience, move it forward as through their enrollment, as well as to graduation. So a lot more information, a lot more interaction involved. How will this improve the student experience? We're going to have access to this information in a variety of ways. We're going to see students interacting when we communicate with them. We're going to have coordination as far as knowing what has been communicated to students. And those are things we don't know right now. We also aren't able to provide reporting. Right? I know that there's information in our academic advising tool called EARS right now, but we cannot report out of that tool right now. So being able to do that in a system of this generation is really exciting and really, we believe, transforming the campus and the student experience.
And you might want to know, how will your work change following this implementation? So for some of you, our student appointment scheduling and notes are going to be built into SLATE, or there will be that option. For some of the advisors that are very excited about this, we get to be the first pilot group, but this is cutting down on the number of different types of applications we'll be using on a regular basis. These appointments will also be tied to a student profile, so we can see comprehensively what that student experience is. Most form processing will be able to link directly to the student profile. This will include things like major applications, course registration. There's a lot of options that we have within the school and the registrar's office to do this as well. It will allow for the full picture of the student experience from prospective student all the way through to graduation. This will really open the doors to a lot of tracking, a lot of reporting that we haven't been able to do within one isolated system at this point. It will also limit third-party communication or application systems. So for those of you who might be spending some of your budget to purchase additional software, additional systems that we use, the idea is we're able to integrate a lot of those uses, again, into this one system that we already have. When will we see Slate for Student Success live? Soon. The slow rollout is happening this quarter. So we're, again, beginning with academic advising use for appointments and notes, and then there'll be a slow progression beyond there as we start to build out different parts of the system. And finally, how can you learn more about this or get involved if you're interested? Please do visit the website that Amanda referenced earlier through the Office of the Chancellor. There are regular updates. We do weekly meetings with our consultants. Those are updated on that weekly basis. You can see the progress that's being made so far, as well as some examples, timeline, goals, etc. There'll be upcoming information sessions as well, and you can always reach out to Andre and I, too. We'll look forward to seeing you in a breakout session.
I'd like to invite up Joyce Dinglason-Penlilio to tell us about the Student Experience Project.
Good afternoon, folks. And some of you may have heard a bit about the Student Experience Project, which, as you heard from Bonnie and Amanda earlier, was a spin-off. We call it a spin-off from the last year's first-year experience work group. So we call it SEP. It essentially is a professional development program that we launched for our faculty across our campus. The intent is to build a community of practice whose goal is to address experience gaps for structurally disadvantaged groups of students. And really, we gathered folks that are crucial faculty instructing or instructors in courses that we know is one of those the gateway classes for many of our majors. A lot of the courses where we know a lot of our students often find challenging or are struggling to get through it. So the intent overall is for us to build and to have steps and to teach faculty steps towards building a more equitable classroom. My graphic failed here, but there are 3 pillars of this student experience project. And again, it is a nationwide program it's chock full of resources that's available out there to support faculty. And so it is essentially built on improving the student's sense of belonging, identity, safety, and growth mindset. So we launched this program. We recruited a group of faculty back in the spring, and we asked them for a 15-week commitment all throughout fall quarter up until middle of winter quarter. And so we've gone through it, and the idea is for them to learn tools that they can implement in their classroom, essentially to build these 3 pillars. And we worked through them, and the condition is they need to implement it right away in the classes that they were teaching this fall quarter. And so I want to definitely acknowledge the folks who made this happen. I was not a one-woman show. We had support from Academic Affairs and Bonnie to provide us with resources to launch this. But my key co-facilitators are present here. I want to acknowledge Dr. Emma Rose, Dr. Anaid Reina, and Darcy Jarson, who were critical in helping us build this community of practice. And these are the 10 faculty and staff who supported, still participating. They're still on the hook up until a few more weeks from now. And so I want to make sure I acknowledge all of the work that they've put into. So the key things that we started with revising, providing faculty with tools in revising the language in their syllabus. And it's something, and what was really good about this program is these are low labor things that we are telling faculty that they can easily implement in their courses. We also provide them with tools on how to provide feedback that helps with the growth mindset. The main push is that, or the main message we want to pass along to our students is, this is a challenging program you're in. This is a challenging course that you're in. And folks, just personally for me, I launched all of these techniques in my Organic Chemistry 1 class this fall quarter. And the idea is, yes, it is challenging, but we are here to support you. is the main message. And we showed tools to faculty on how to effectively provide those feedback in different assessments that they have in the 10-week quarter. But one of the key things that we also implemented as part of this particular program is to survey students. They got surveyed quite a bit. But the survey is a little bit unique to some of the typical surveys of like, what can this class do for you, or how does it? It's more really trying to get to the student's sense of belonging and identity safety. So we were fortunate enough to work with some of the resources, again, as part of the Student Experience Program, and it was based on what we call the Ascend platform. And I'm just gonna briefly show you a couple of the results of this survey. So students were typically asked to either do 2 surveys throughout the 10-week quarter or 3 surveys. It's the identical survey that we sent them, and we were trying to get faculty to get tools on how to make sure that students actually voluntarily participate in this survey. So the one thing is we asked students to complete this, and one of the biggest results from the surveys that we got, and we pulled this from all of the students from all of the courses of those 10 faculty that participated. So we have data for about 320 or so students from this last quarter. And so one of the key things is right away is this idea of communication fidelity. That scored fairly high. 91% of these students who surveyed knew that I believe that this particular question in the survey says that the information that I am giving to this survey is going to be used by my faculty to help improve my experience in the class. And so that was one of the things that really came up that was bang on, it's a really good tool. They give faculty a pat in the back when your scores are great. But the rest of the survey is really built upon some of these critical learning conditions, is how we call it. So there's belonging, certainty, identity, safety, institutional growth mindset, self-efficacy, social belonging, social connectedness, trust, and fairness. And again, what we've got here, again, you see about the roughly 320 responses that we've collected in the 10 weeks. And the rated positivity on this survey are fairly solid. I am going to highlight one little thing there, and I'll come back to that in a second. But what we see on the right is their plus or minus based on the change in responses over the 2 or 3 times they were surveyed. And so majority of them, there's actually an increase towards from between and we launched the surveys in the beginning of the quarter, mid, and towards the end. In fact, we still are debriefing the very last part of the survey in our meeting next week. The one thing we're doing well on most of them, so that means our students are feeling a sense of belonging in the classroom, they're feeling supported. But the one thing I do want to draw your attention, and this is not the first time I've seen data like this, is for the student connectedness. And so I think we've seen that a couple of times, that this is an area where I see Bonnie trying to get the mic from me, but she asked me to show you data, and so that's what I did. And so it's been a pleasure. I do want to make a plug that we are trying to keep this program going. We are trying to recruit our second cohort of faculty in the spring and make it a little bit larger, so I want to encourage more faculty to join, but there will be a showcase so that you can hear directly from those wonderful participants who came and joined us this quarter to deliver their message across campus, and that's the week of January 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. So those are just 2 examples of sort of some of the results that have come out of this work, but we're going to, in a moment, have breakout sessions where you can talk to the co-chairs of the various groups to get deeper information. Before we do that, I just want to call back to what Amanda was saying about how, in the long term, most of what we do needs to be part of sort of daily work. And so there are a number of things that over the past 2 years, that we've seen some exciting developments, and some are directly tied to our work in the student success strategy. Some are not. Some are happening elsewhere on campus, but we're all complementing the same set of goals. So, for example, our academic advisors have built some central infrastructure for cross-campus collaboration, including the Academic Advising Leadership Council. Building on those efforts, And with a program review conducted by NACADA in the spring, we are currently searching for a new director of academic advising. That position closes on Friday. Tell your friends. This new role will enhance coordination and assessment of advising across schools while maintaining our existing decentralized structure. Together, these developments are going to create some infrastructure that we can use for institutionalizing some of the recommendations that come from our working groups. Also, career development and education has relocated to the first floor of GWP. There's no change in organizational structure, but the co-location provides opportunities for the various offices there to work together. Deeper collaboration between career services, advising, and the other units in the area. And this will hopefully start transforming that suite into a dynamic student success hub. Outside of our strategy is a ton. I'm always afraid to put a couple of examples because I want to give everybody's examples. But a couple of examples of some things that are happening on campus that are aligned with this work include the revision of core led by Dr. Deirdre Raynor of the Office of Undergraduate Education, and a number of faculty development initiatives, including the incredibly successful long-standing SEED professional development, and Heather Dillon from SET has a newer faculty development around undergraduate research. So these examples remind us that student success is a shared goal, one that involves collaborations across units and a commitment to ongoing innovation. And I told you, we're just about to the breakouts. I told you we would talk about the data parties. So Amanda also mentioned, in addition to the institutionalization of our work, the need to have more metrics that help shape the direction that we're going. So a major goal for us this year is to develop what we're calling a common outcomes framework, a set of metrics that are more immediate than things like retention, that help us directly assess the outcomes of our work, both for the student success work and for the individual units. So we've started a series of events called data parties. The purpose is to collaboratively interpret our data and grow our capacity to use data to drive action. We're calling them parties not because the subject is light or unimportant, but to bring a spirit of joy and welcoming to data analysis. So we're starting with the notion that all of us in this room and on campus are data people with a unique perspective that helps make us stronger together. The next data party is going to be on February 3rd from 2 to 4, save the date. And we're going to talk more about the common outcomes framework there. And I think I go to Amanda.
Great. Okay, so a lot of information, and now there's an opportunity to connect around the topic of your choice. So I'm going to invite the co-chairs to please head to the back of the room. On your tables are signs that will help folks to identify which table you're at. These are going to include all of the 5 working groups that we discussed that are happening this year, but also we've got strategic enrollment planning, knowing that these are complementary efforts that help to support student success and our enrollment goals. And then if you have high level, just big picture strategic questions, Bonnie and I will also be manning a table in the back. So we are going to call folks back together in 15 minutes. So at 1:20, we will come back together and answer Q&A, typical town hall style. So please get up, meet some new people, and connect around these different student success topics.
We're going to try and bring everybody back together for a Q&A, given that this is a town hall. We want to thank all of the participants who engaged. I heard some really great conversations, but I particularly want to thank the co-chairs for coming in and representing the incredible work that they are doing. And I think we are now going to move into our Q&A part of the town hall. Amanda and I are very proud of ourselves that we are actually on time with the agenda that we set. There are microphones on either side of the room. Tim is going to run the microphone. And Joe. Uh-oh.
Well, I have a question. Can I get like a thumbs up if you learned something new today from the town hall? Nice, nice.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Hi, this is Vanessa. I have a very quick logistical question. Where might we be able to access your slides, or specifically around the data points that you have?
I believe we can put that, Joe, in the what you need to know. There's also the, I'll just leave it up, actually. Don't want to make you nauseated. In this report, you can also find all of the data, which will all be updated. Actually, no, 1 quarter retention will be updated on Census Day, but everything else will be updated next fall.
I was just curious, when a new department or unit is signed into Slate and they're using that system, when it's used for collaborative purposes, what degree of information is seen across departments for a student's profile?
That is a fabulous question. I'm going to let Beth Ann and Andrea answer, because that is a major
We love that question.
And she passes it to me. All right, so this is a role-based system, so we're going to be going through that process of determining by your role on the campus what kind of access you're going to get. So it might not be everything you want. It might be more than you want. So I think that's what's going to be happening within the next month or so, month to 6 weeks, is determining by office, by individual, what kind of access you're going to get. So contact us if you're intrigued about that and what you want to advocate for. Okay.
And if I can add, my understanding is that there are some settings. So for example, advising notes. You could see that there is an advising note, but you might not be able to see what's in the note. So there's different levels. Some are public, some are private. Yeah. And one thing this group is charged with is creating a long-term governing structure, because this is going to be this is ongoing work. Yeah.
I'd also offer there's going to be some trainings and other ways to learn more about the Slate for Student Success. And so if you go to that webpage that Andrea and Beth Ann pointed to, you can find out more information about when and where those are being hosted. And then I saw Alex had a question.
Hey, this is actually another Slate question. I'm curious to know quite a bit about it. Well, I'll just kind of list out my questions. Is this a tri-campus initiative, or Seattle and Bothell also using this? So that's one. The other question is we were talking at the table about sort of some of the things we already subscribe to, or I guess these websites or clearinghouses for information. And it does, from my perspective as a faculty member, I don't recall ever receiving any instruction on sort of what DubNet is, how to use DubNet, what pause is, these things that I think are valuable tools, and I know students use them, but I think in order to get institutional buy-in, they need to be sold to everyone, and that to me sounds like more than just a training session, but really to get everybody to buy in is super important. Mm-hmm. And then the other question I have is just about cost. Are we allowed to talk about sort of what something like this costs, and how long of a contract are we signing up for, and who retains the information?
I'd like to ask Shannon to answer some of those questions, because she has really been the lead on that end of it.
Thanks. A lot of questions.
So yeah, I'm happy to disclose how it works. So Slate is by a company called Technolutions, and it's one of the primary CRMs that's used in higher education across the country. It started primarily to serve admission functions, so it was a way of getting information for prospective students all the way through to the point that they enrolled in classes. The other half of that then was work that they did in alumni and advancement, so that's sort of end of cycle engagement. And over the last few years, there's really been a strong effort to build the middle part of that pipeline, creating a cradle to or I know we're not supposed to say grave, but tool that could track students throughout their entire experience with an institution. And it primarily allows us as a constituent management tool to be able to communicate with students. But in its evolving fashion, one of the things that it does so well is it captures student interactions. So every time an email goes to a student, it shows you, was that email opened? How long did they spend on it? Did they click onto anything? It tells you, we can put in interactions and dialogue, the communications that we have with students. We can create forms that students can fill out. We can do surveys. So there's, we can track events. There's just, the capabilities are really robust. The University of Washington Tacoma campus and Bothell campus both use Slate admission. We both have admission instances. The Seattle campus is exploring the ability to use Slate for their admissions instance. They don't use it currently, and as a result, the university is exploring the option of creating an enterprise tool, using Slate as an enterprise tool. The graduate school uses Slate for admission, and so there are a number of Slate instances throughout the 3 campuses. We are the first campus to use Slate Student Success. And honestly, we're a forerunner nationally in terms of Slate Student Success. This is pretty, and there are schools using it, but we're on the forefront of that. The way that we implemented Slate Student Success was, honestly, we had some salary savings and we said, Slate Student Success can be built on top of the admissions instance, which we already have purchased and are using. And so we used some salary savings to hire a consultant. We went out to RFP to hire a consultant to help us do the implementation, and that's the part that we're in now. And we're building Slate Student Success on top of the admissions instance.
And sorry, Shannon, when you say salary savings, you're talking about admission salary savings.
Admission salary savings, yeah. So we had vacant positions and we used those dollars to fund the consultant. In terms of overall cost to the institution, we spend about $50,000 a year on the Slate admissions instance. It manages all of our applications, and I don't see us moving away from that. And Slate Student Success cost us nothing outside of the consultant fees to implement. So there's no additional costs and there's no per person licensures. So it's just a flat rate for the instance on a yearly basis. So did that answer all your questions, I think? We're in a 4-year contract that gets reviewed every 4 years.
In Bothell, they use a system called EAB Navigate that does some of the similar things that Slate Student Success will be doing. It is a lot more expensive, indeed. Any last minute easy questions? If not, I think you know where to find us. What's that?
Sheila, any final comments? Chancellor Lang, if you'd like to close us out.
I would like to just say join me in thanking all of the presenters, all of the co-leads for the groups. The evolution of this work is just inspiring, and I never imagined when we first started talking about this that it would get to this point, but it is so wonderful to see just the incredible work, and it's thanks to the leadership of all of you in the room, people who, you have day jobs, but you serve on these committees. You care about what happens to our students, and you care about their success. And so I just appreciate that so much. So thank you. Everybody join me. February will be an update, and we have some really important updates coming up. We will have our master planning framework to share. We'll have a lot of we just have a lot of things going on that you all need to know about. The legislative session starts next week, and there are some budget issues for the state. We'll have more information on that in February. So see you all in February. Thank you.